Engdahl on swine flu vaccine linked to paralysis. This is in the Rock Creek Free Press. I know Stephen Lemon at Global Research has written about this issue for a long time now. Go to globalresearch.ca or go to Stephen Lemon's blog about it. You want to really find out about what's going on with this, you know, you really have to educate yourself. And if you're not self-motivated after seeing that it might affect the health of you or your loved ones, I mean, I guess you're not going to get self-actualized or get off the couch for that, for anything else. But I think that that's something that we're getting totally snowed over on, with the CDC and the people from the Obama administration coming out talking about this kind of thing. I mean, again, if you look at the money behind it versus the research, it becomes clear what's up with it.
Now, if you have compromised health or in some way immune deficiencies, my niece, who is a PhD chemistry and she's doing the research on the flu at the Children's Hospital in Memphis, says that get the shots. You know, so she's making that recommendation, and so it's not clear cut, but it's certainly over. It's kind of become a hyper-reality situation in terms of corporate media.
Fear into unquestioning, so you accept.
Hi, I'm Lynn Krause. Mickey's boss? No, not really. First of all, I want to thank you thanks to SDS for sponsoring. Thanks to Project Censored for doing, I think, something to address the issue of an Iraqi life isn't really worth that much, maybe, or you know, a black person in New Orleans after Katrina, or you know, somebody else, our own Feno Gutu's son in Nairobi. That there's this sort of natural bias against people of color, I think. Not I think, I know. And there's also an English bias. In other words, you guys primarily, I'm assuming most of you do your work in English. And obviously there's Al Jazeera, there's, you know, millions of other sources, maybe not millions, many other sources that aren't in English. So how do you address those issues of sort of natural bias? In other words, it's not, I guess I'm accusing Project Censored, you know, as well as, you know, New York Times for this kind of approach.
Well, you wouldn't be the first person to say that we need to be more diverse and engaged, and it continues to be said. One of the things is Sonoma State's an incredibly white university. 78%. It's the whitest and wealthiest public university in the state of California. So we're working with students who are not diverse and trying to build that. So part of that is expanding, getting other colleges and other people involved in a very big way, and constantly being conscious of that and engaged in that. Now we do feature Al Jazeera English on the website. I think the biggest television show I've ever been on was Al Jazeera, because I've never been in, the New York Times has never mentioned Project Censored. And corporate media just totally ignore it. So I've been on television in South America, Telesur, Al Jazeera, Europe, Germany, Holland, in Italy, all over the world, but here, forget it. It just doesn't happen. And you know, and so in some ways that's reflected in what we're doing. You know, I think pretty clear. But yeah, I think what you're saying, racism, diversity are the core issues. We did a study at Sonoma State on showing how it became the whitest and richest institution in the state of California. It's published on our website, and boy, did I get a lot of static over that. Probably more so than other things that we've written. You know, just really reactionary, racist stuff. But yeah, we'll just keep putting stuff out there that validating research. We're doing a study right now that will finish in June on the number of police killings, law enforcement related deaths in the U.S. We've now documented 570 for the 2007 year, and we've interviewed 10 families who've lost loved ones. We're going to probably interview 10 more. So if you know anybody that has had that experience and would be willing to be interviewed, please have them contact me, because we're still looking for families who'd be willing to be interviewed. What we're finding is that the way the press covers these things, the families are just devastated. They don't even put obituaries in paper. You know, it's just so awful that what's happened. and then how badly they're treated. So, so it's going to be a controversial study when we get it, we'll finish it.
On before the whole internet bill.
Well, they went to alternative independent journals, some political journals, some labor union journals, even church reports, human rights reports. I mean, there's a whole host of independent sources of information. They're also, however, not ubiquitous like corporate media is. And what Peter was saying earlier about, you know, how 25 years ago, 30 years ago, there were over 50 corporations controlling the media. That meant that there were still a lot of localized, still big, you know, media, but more localized, you know, more local, what was going on, more, you know, more what's more reporting going on. So that's certainly been lessened in large part by the deregulation and the conglomeration of corporate media. So there were a lot of places, because Project Censored had been around long before the internet.
So when we started, most of the stories we were finding were getting from print publications. Most of the, even Mother Jones, when I first started, they weren't online. Now they're all online. So it's mostly internet search. We're monitoring like 800 websites, so there's a lot more to monitor. I mean, we've got links to, in our independent sources, to hundreds of independent news sites all over the world, not just, I mean, we pick the ones we trust the most for our daily news, but we've got links to just hundreds and hundreds. So,
Here's the list.
There's a list, yeah, it goes on and on and on.
So there are places to get information. I'll have to say that the web has been a great help and a great aggregator. You said a hub. I think that's a really good term. But I mean, there's lots of places to go. So it's interesting that students always ask, and people that we talk to out in public audience, well, where do you get your information? Well, how much time do you have? But that's the interesting thing is what generates that question is people are just really locked into their patterns and they really don't know necessarily where to go to find certain things. So that's why it's very important to just try to tell people, hey, you know, like if Project Censored isn't the be-all end-all for you, that's great, but it's at least a place that you can go and springboard and find this. You know, you can start just looking at these sites and see, well, what are these groups saying? You can just skim right over them and see this, like I said earlier, or go to a different analysis. You know, you want to see what certain groups of people think about what's going on for workers around the world. Go to the World Socialist website and you'll find out. You want to see what's going on in Venezuela from a non-corporate perspective of people that on the ground and poor people on the ground. Go read Venezuela analysis. Read op-ed news. So there are a lot of places to go, but fortunately now there's a lot of places that are at your fingertips if you have access to technology. And again, Peter mentioned this too, a lot of people in most parts of the world don't. They don't. So we really have to try to make this more and more
Those
accessible.
of us that do, it's our responsibility to share. And whether, you know, you have access to a radio show or to writing for a newspaper, I mean, all of you could write about your experience here today and post it on Indie Media San Francisco or Indie Media Bay, and it'll be there for the whole world to see. So we are the media. In fact, we got that book over here that just came out, Be the Media, which explains in complete detail how to do it. Signs and blogs and books and everything. We are. I mean, it's media from the bottom up. That's what's going to protect democracy. That's the only thing that will.
So we have time for one more. It would be Frank gets the last word.
Saving the best for last.
Frank Running Horse. I wanted to point out a recent example of the military-industrial complex connection to the media and how it censors the media. This last weekend, or the October 17th, 30 of us from DVC, from Students for Democratic Society, and from the Concord area, United for Healthcare Justice, and the Contra Costa Peace and Freedom Party, marched in an anti-war march in San Francisco against the war in Afghanistan for money for human needs, such as education and healthcare, not warfare. It didn't get one article in the newspaper, even though we had over 1,000 people marching. You can see someone, I passed out some flyers here. It showed the picture, it showed the march. 3 or 4 blocks long, 1,000 people. Not a peep in the newspaper. But that same day, we got coverage of 24 people protesting the quarterback, Vic, at the Raiders game. So 24 people gets more coverage than 1,000 people standing up against the war, which doesn't get a peep. And I wanted to ask them, do a little survey here. How many people